Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Hanson. So we're back with another video, and I'm going to show you guys how to create a command that will add a user to whatever role they want. Okay, we're going to do a very simple implementation. So what I'm going to do is we're going to have a command called !add, and it's going to have the role name, for example. And it's going to add them to whatever role on the server. So in this case, if we wanted to add ourselves to computer science, we can do so like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a command. We're going to call it else if. Well, we're going to say else if. We're going to create another check. We're going to check to make sure that command starts with the prefix as well as the add command name. That's what we're doing when we check the isValid command function. Okay, if this is the first video that you're watching in the series, I highly recommend you check out the other videos so you can, start from scratch. Okay, all the code in this video is the same thing as the last video. Okay, we're just continuing off from where we last left off. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to get this argument. Okay, we want to get this argument. So let's say, for example, if I want to add myself to computer science, right? I should be able to add myself to that. Okay. Now let's also say if I wanted to add myself to member, right? That should also add myself to that role. I actually have the roles, so let me actually delete those. But you guys get the idea. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and say let args equal message.content. So what I want to do actually is I want to set this string, the content of the message, to lowercase. Okay, if you don't know what the content is, basically that's the actual message that the user sent. Okay, so the message itself is an object that has a bunch of other properties, but to get the actual message, like the actual string that the user sent, you reference the content property. We're setting it to lowercase because what we want to do is we want to get the argument that the user passed in with the command, and we're going to check the guild to make sure that the role actually exists. Okay, so from here on, I'm actually going to get rid of this !add space substring. Okay, because right now the message.content looks like this. I'll show you. Save. Right now it looks like this, but I just want the member. Okay, so we're gonna do .substring, and we're going to pass in the number 5 because what the substring function does is it returns a substring at the specified location within a string object. Okay, so it actually takes in 2 parameters. The first parameter is required, the second one is optional. So you can specify like certain boundaries on where you want to start and where you want to end. So in this case, if we look at our string, you can see that strings are 0 indexed, so the question mark is at position 0, A is position 1, position 2 is D, position D is 3, the space is position 4, and M is at position 5. Okay, now the way this command works is that the first parameter is always going to be at position 5, granted that they have only one space over here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say substring 5. Okay, and then we're going to just leave it like that. So now if I go over to here, we're going to just have the member parameter, and it's in lowercase, which is perfect. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to check to make sure that the role actually exists in the guild. So to do that, in version 12 it's a lot different than version 11, but it's nothing crazy. Okay, so in version 11 they used collections for practically everything. In this version they use role managers, but it has a property called cache that is pretty much a collection. So I'll show you how to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say let guild equals message. Actually, no. We're going to say let cache equals message dot guild dot roles. So what I'm doing here is I am destructuring this roles object. So this roles object, okay, is the role manager. Let me actually show you the documentation real quick. Where is it? Role manager. Right here. So this role manager is basically, if we go into guild, where is guild? I want to show you where this is coming from. So this is very important. If we go to guild, which is what I'm doing here, message.guild is going to get you the guild that the message was sent in. And if you go to roles, and you click on roles and you click on the type, you can see that these are all the properties, and we can destructure this. You can destruct this object and just directly pull out the actual properties using this bracket notation. This is called destructuring. Okay, so I can also get cache type if I wanted to, which you can see is also another property, but we're only going to get the cache because the cache itself is the cache that has all of the roles in the guild. This is the manager, the role manager cache. Okay, and you can see it's also collection, so it's a little bit different in version 12, but nothing too drastic. Okay, obviously there probably are things that happen a lot differently underneath the hood. That's why the developers implemented this feature, but it's nothing too crazy. Okay, so what we're going to do with this cache now is we're going to go ahead and say let find role equal, or actually I'm just going to say let role, let role equal cache.find. This is going to take in a callback function. Okay, this is also known as a predicate function. So what the function is going to do is it's going to go through the entire collection, processing each element until it finds the first element that matches the condition. So in this case, we're going to compare the name of the role. So we're going to say role. Well, we actually have to set it to lowercase as well. So we're going to say role.name.to lowercase. And we're going to check to make sure that equals to args. Okay. And if that is true, so if this returns an actual role, then it would be a truthy value, which means that this condition would be satisfied, which is what we're going to, then inside this block over here, we're going to add the user to the role. However, if the role was not found, and it's going to go into this else case, and we're just going to say role not found. Okay, I'm not sure why that's red, but so if that's true, what we're going to have to do next is we're going to go ahead and actually do a couple things. One, we're going to check to make sure that the user themselves does not have the role. So we're going to say if message.member.roles.cache has, or find. Let me see something real quick. Check if an element exists in the collection. I wonder if I pass in, because I never really used has before, but it says the key is a string. But the thing is, what is the actual key though? I think the key itself is actually the role ID. So we're going to check role ID actually. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure the roles itself. Yeah, because the cache itself, the collection, is also a map. So I'm pretty sure it maps each ID to the actual role itself. So let me actually verify that real quick. So let me actually go over to cache. Okay, let me log cache real quick. And let's just see what that returns. Okay, so we can see that we're logging the cache. And we can see that yes. Okay, perfect. So we don't have to do find, which is probably it's a slower operation because you have to go through every single element. Since we're using collections, we have direct access because we have key value pairs, so we can directly access it, which is much faster. So we're checking to see if the cache has the role ID, okay? Because remember, the cache itself is also a map. Okay, it's a collection, but the collection is a map, so that means the cache itself is a map as well. Okay, so we're gonna check to see if it has that role ID, and if it does, we're gonna say you already have this role. Okay, now if it doesn't, we also need to check to make sure. Well, I'm just going to return. We're also going to do one more check. We're going to check to make sure it doesn't have certain permissions. So I want to cover all the basic things that you need to check. You want to make sure you check the user has the role already. You also want to make sure the role itself doesn't have certain permissions. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if role.permissions has, and we're going to check a bunch of permissions. We're going to check to see if they have administrator. That's an important one. Role.permissions has kick members. We're going to just make it simple. because there's so many permissions out there. But I'm pretty sure there's an easier way to do this. I'm just not entirely sure what, because I'm pretty sure you can also compare it to like I think a bit string or like a bit field. I'm not entirely sure. So I'm sure if you guys went on the Discord JS server and asked, they would probably be able to tell you. But we're just gonna do some simple role permissions real quick. So we're gonna also check to see that they can't manage the guild as well, because these are very important permissions that you want to make sure that your people are not adding themselves to. Right? Manage channels. Okay. Again, there are a whole bunch of different permissions. We're not going to worry about all of them for now. Okay. And then I'm going to just simply say, obviously this kind of looks a little bit ugly, so I'll leave it like this. Okay. So if that's the case, we're going to say, you cannot add yourself to this role. Okay, cool. I would suggest probably making a function that wraps all of these checks together. So for example, if I can write a function that says something like const check permission role, and this is gonna take in, what was it again? Role. And we can just return this Boolean value. It looks really ugly, but I'm gonna try to tidy it up real quick. The hell's going on? Okay. Yeah, basically this function is just gonna return true or false. If it's gonna return true if at least one of these conditions are met. Okay, and that's good because if it's true, then that means you don't want them to add themselves to a role that has admin permissions or very powerful permissions. Okay. Okay, cool. So I think that's pretty much it. We don't have to do anything else from there. And role not found. Perfect. So if the role is not found, okay. So so the next thing we have to do is we actually have to add the user to the role. Okay, so if permission role, then we'll just leave it like that. So else, we're going to just add the user to role. To do that, we're going to go ahead and say message.member .roles.add. Okay, so before you could just call the add, there was actually a function called add role on the member object, but now you have to do it through the roles manager. Okay, so it's nothing tedious, it's nothing too crazy, it's just the way that they want to handle certain things. So yeah, it's nothing too crazy. So we're gonna do message.member.roles.add, and we're going to pass in a role resolvable, which can either be the role ID or the role object itself. We already have the role object itself. We already checked to see if it exists, and it does. So we just pass in role. And so one thing I will mention is that the add function returns a promise. So I will actually handle this promise just to be safe. The only thing that I need to do is I'm gonna go ahead and say .then, and we're gonna go ahead and say so if the member itself was successfully added to the role, it takes in one parameter. The parameter that is resolved from the promise is the member object, but I'm not going to do anything with it, so I'm just going to go ahead and send a message. I'm going to say message.channel.send, you were added to this role, and there might be an error that might be thrown, so I'm going to catch that error. And this error itself, we're just going to log it to the console. We can also send another message too, so we can say something like message.channel.send, something went wrong. Okay, so this error, an error will happen if the bot does not have permissions, and I'll show you in just a sec. Okay, so let's actually test this out. So let's go ahead and add ourselves to the member role. You cannot add yourself to this role. Why is that the case? Does member have a certain permission? I have no idea. I gotta check. It doesn't. Check permission role. Oh, we didn't pass in role. Forgot to do that. Okay. Now that should have added us to the role. And we're added. Perfect. Okay. So let's try to add ourselves to a role that has, you know, administrator permission. Okay, so let's try to add ourselves to streamer. Add ourselves. Huh, that's strange. Wait, did I check admin? I did. Hold on, wait a minute. Why did that? Wait, you were added to, so that should have not happened. Check permission role. Role has role up permission that has administrator. Okay, that should have returned true, but why did that not return true? Which is kind of questioning. Oh, wait, I turned on the wrong permission. Oh my god. Okay. You guys are probably face palming back there. Okay, anyway, so you cannot add yourself to the role. Here we go, perfect. Okay. And of course, there's a bunch of other tests that you should try too. But I'm going to show you guys what happens if you try to have the bot add it to a role that's higher. So one thing that I will mention is that the bot itself, so you want to make sure, a couple things I need to mention. You need to make sure your bot has the manage role permission, which is this permission right here. If it doesn't, then it cannot add users to role. Okay. Now your bot can only add roles to users to other members that are under it. So for example, my bot can only add members to roles that are under this bot role. Everything under here. So it won't be able to add myself to the moderator or admin role. Okay, so it really just depends on how you structure your role hierarchy. But if I try to add myself to moderator, it's going to throw an error. And which is why it says something went wrong. Just like right over there. Okay. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward. A couple things that I should mention to you guys is that you guys should try to, if you guys wanted to add multiple roles, then all you need to do is just do some parsing. But I'll probably save that for another video. But I just wanted to show you a simple implementation on how to add a user to a role. Just one role for now. We'll focus on multiple roles later. Okay, so yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.